Hey, everybody. Can you hear me? Y'all doing okay? Hey, Mr. Mayor. Good, thank you. We got a ad hoc budget committee meeting here. And I don't even have an agenda in front of me, but I bet Amy's got one. We will start with a moment of silence. So we are being recorded, so we're in progress. Would y'all please join me for a moment of silence, please? Amen. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're gonna go over the stormwater budget, general fund and enterprise fund budget and see what else y'all want to chat about. And Amy, you want to take us away with the stormwater budget, or you gonna present that?
Matt is going to present that, so Matt, I'll stop sharing my screen.
Okay.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Matt Fountain.
Yeah, sorry, Matt Fountain. We have many Matts.
We have many Matts.
So we have a relatively brief overview, since most of the members are well familiar with the department and its functions. But just as a quick reminder, three major functional groups within the department: project management, which manages our large and small projects, our pump stations, our regulatory program, which is running our permit review process, both from an MS4, the traditional stormwater development side, but also from the floodplain regulatory side. Compliance, obviously, with those permits and other requirements under our EPA MS4 permits delegated through the state. The management of our actual utility program, which is how we collect fees, revenue, education and outreach, which is one of our mandated activities under our delegated federal permits, and field operations, obviously maintenance, rehabilitation, construction, and general support for the department. The mission of the department, as we see it, is the reduction of the impact of flooding on the city. Project management group, again, manage our funded projects to mitigate existing flood impacts, identify and prioritize potential projects to mitigate existing flood impacts, and then maintain the functionality of our constructed projects, which is important as we continue to bring on things like major pump stations. From a regulatory perspective, focusing on new development must not contribute to nor be vulnerable to flooding issues. Redevelopment should improve flooding issues, which are frequently impacted by the fact that those previous development projects were not built under any level of stormwater regulation or floodplain regulation, and reduce vulnerabilities, and then protect water quality. Operations group, we're rehabilitating existing infrastructure. We've converted to a proactive system maintenance approach, and then we still perform reactive issue resolution if we either find an issue ourselves or if we have a reported work order from residents or from business owners or landowners in the area. So we always try to set up our budget to match those goals and intents in existing programs, and then we can walk through any level of detail you'd like on the details of the budget, but generally we're relatively consistent this year with previous years. We have our ongoing consistent annual expenses. From a staff perspective, this is the fully loaded cost, so it includes the insurance, the taxes, retirement contributions, everything else. We run about $7 million a year. Equipment and vehicle purchases, as well as maintenance and repair work, operating expenses on those vehicles and pieces of equipment, about $1.7 million. Our small project funding, in-house construction work, and our IDC contracts, which are generally for pipe cleaning for Vector truck operations, is about $3 million. Emergency repair work and emergency pumping operations are at $500,000. Those obviously vary or have the potential to vary, but we have been pretty close to this number for quite a number of years at this point. The pump station O&M, the operations and maintenance of the pump stations, we went up a little bit this year, about $475,000, with the Spring Fishburne Lockwood pump station starting to come online. The construction of the pump house itself, obviously, is actually coming to the next council meeting, but many of the pumps and control systems are already installed, bar screens, other devices to let it operate as a gravity system currently. And then we have third-party support, which is primarily stormwater plan review support, as well as some consulting support for the program, generally trying to close staff shortages or provide occasional management of surges of permit applications. That's about $300,000 per year. Adding again to these consistent annual expenses, we did request about $120,000 for staff structure adjustments. This has been budgeted. It's not yet been approved for implementation by HR. HR is looking to basically receive the compensation study towards the middle or end of next year, and has identified that they would like to consider some of our proposals as part of that compensation study and then evaluate after they have those results. And then a new project manager position, in this case, a project manager 3, which is 1 grade above our current project manager, our 2 project manager ranges, which are PM1 and PM2. That's $170,000 loaded cost. Again, that's the loaded cost, not the salary. The salary is significantly lower than that, but that's what the budgeting cost is to incorporate a position like that. And that is at the request of council to try to proceed with more of our funded but not yet initiated capital projects. So our variable expenses, 2024, the primary one that we're looking at is an implementation for the utility billing system. So we're currently under contract with Currently under contract with Black & Veatch's management consulting group, looking at our existing utility billing system that operates with CWS. They're developing implementation options for us, and then with costs to basically bring that account management and billing system into the city. And there will be a number of ways you could bill and manage depending on how we want to move forward, whether it's through county tax offices, whether it continues to be with CWS, whether it's direct billing by the city. But basically purchasing the software and then building the system to be able to do whichever option we select. We're tentatively budgeting for $750,000. The exact cost will vary significantly depending on what level of sophistication we want and which method we choose to move forward with, but that's a good budget number for the moment. We do continue to budget significant salary savings. We're showing about $700,000 at this point. That's, again, the expected vacancies for the department. We've been running well above that the last couple of years, saving significantly more money than that, but we are always optimistic that we will hire, and we want to make sure we have the money available to hire if we're able to find more employees. I always try to put in a slide to say, not for this year's budget, but what else are we considering and what are we making sure we're keeping an eye out for in future years' budgets, to make sure we don't over allocate in a utility fund where we don't generally have the ability to generate or assign new revenue. We're keeping an eye on pump station O&M expenses as we will start building the actual Spring Fishburne pump station and installing those large scale pumps, which will obviously have the contractor keeping up with them over the next couple of years, but then shifting over to the city at the end of that time. And then the King Uji pump station, we're actually receiving our contractor pre-qualification statements today, and we'll be looking to identify those qualified bidders and receive a low bid proposal over the next month or two and bring that to council for starting construction on that project as well. And then we are currently upfitting Concord and MUSC, so many of those expenses are being handled through the drainage fund with contractors working on those stations. But as they are completed, obviously they will roll into a more traditional proactive operations and maintenance plan as well. Current challenges for the department, construction inflation impacts. We seem to be seeing a little bit of a flattening of those impacts, unlike the last couple of years where it was a very, very, very drastic increase each year. The numbers have not come down, and there is still some uncertainty in long-term equipment purchases. It's starting to shift as to what those concerns are. Concrete pipes much more available, large-scale electrical equipment much less available, but we're semi-optimistic that our budget numbers will start to be a little more accurate as all of the back-looking cost estimating applications are able to start to absorb those impacts for forward-looking future estimates, but it's always a risk. Condition of the existing pump stations. Obviously, we've got 2 currently being upfit, so that should start to address those issues as they move into that upfit plan. Capital project workload versus project manager capacity. We're looking to add that project manager. We still have significantly more funded projects than we have capacity to begin projects, mostly from the incredible success we've had in grant applications and in TIF performance for the city. And then hiring and retaining positions within construction capabilities. I'll have a slide on this in a minute, but engineers to some extent, and then especially CDL drivers, equipment operators, skilled trades. These are very, very difficult positions to hire for at the moment and retain. Our utility fee collection system we talked about, and then outfall maintenance permitting, continuing to work through with the Army Corps of Engineers and DHEC methodologies to receive permits to be able to work in critical area marsh areas to restore some of these outfalls throughout the city that have accreted in. Just a quick highlight slide for our staffing issues. These are not every group in the department. The office staff tends to be pretty much completely filled. It's not entirely true, but almost completely filled at this point, generally retaining pretty well. We do have some very long lead times on hiring, but those positions are doing much better this year than they had been in previous years. The area we still continue to struggle is in our field operations groups and basically skilled equipment operations. Entry-level labor, we've got 9 filled positions, 10 vacant positions. We do have some success with temp agencies filling those vacancies, so that one is not nearly as dire as it appears, and that we can generally fill at least half of those vacancies with temp agency employees. And we have had some pretty good success converting some of the temp agency employees into city employees if they perform well and do well. Crew leaders, this is the hand clean crew leaders for those ditches, the ditch programs that are in that entry-level labor. 2 vacant, 1 filled. The ditch foreman position, 1 vacant, none filled at this point. There's only 1 position in that. Light equipment operators, these are what we call MEO1 and MEO2 positions, motor equipment operators. They'll basically operate pickup trucks, dump trucks, small dump trucks, non-CDL dump trucks, tractors, mowers, 2 vacant, 4 filled. Then moving into the heavy equipment operators, these are the more skilled operator positions, typically CDL drivers, operating backhoes, excavators. We have 4 vacancies, 3 filled positions. The jet vacs, those are the big trucks that drive around cleaning out the pipes and the drainage boxes. Have 2 different grades of position, 3 different grades of position within those operators, but 4 vacancies, 7 filled positions, and then operator leadership, which are kind of the management, not the field operations leadership, but 1 level below that, basically managing the work elements within the department. We have one for construction, 1 for maintenance, and 1 for jet factor. 2 vacancies.
Matt, could I interrupt you? Councilmember Waring has a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Back to jet vac vacancy. I mean, what does a position like that pay? Approximately.
So it does vary somewhat within the grading, but typically the jet vectors. Let me make sure I give you a completely accurate number, Councilman. 1 second. Typically, our jet vector operators are sitting at about, and again, it varies a little bit with experience, but around $55,000 a year.
Let me ask I know a couple of drivers that with CDL licenses that they drive for basically pull containers from the port to the railroad and then back. Okay. Where in our system would a person with that kind of skill set fit in, or is it a person? I mean, they got CDLs, but you can't drive a backhoe. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So our it kind of bridges the gap a little bit between an HEO1, a heavy equipment operator 1, and a MEO2, which is our motor equipment operator 2 position. So that's between 40 and, depending on experience level, between probably 40,000, and the HEOs would be more like 50,000, 50. Yeah, probably about 40 to 50,000, depending on experience.
So I think the question is more like, what would it take to convert a over-the-road CDL truck driver to a jet vac operator. Does that sound right?
Right,
Councilman?
I agree. Yeah, what about?
It would
that
take some
situation is
training.
just learning. It's learning to operate the jet vector equipment and maintain the jet vector equipment. It's not an incredibly difficult thing to do, but it is a skilled trade. So it's generally a year or two's worth of work to learn that skill set. The real challenge tends to be the jet vector operators. It's a combination of being a CDL driver and doing physical labor and getting in the trenches and getting dirty. It's something of a stereotype, but it's not an entirely untrue generalization that a lot of CDL drivers don't necessarily want that side of the work, let's say.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you. Oh, and one other thing, do we anticipate any retirements potentially of any of our project managers in the next fiscal year?
So we've had one project manager move to part-time, and that is the only expected retirement at this point.
So have you accounted for that in this budget? Potentially, instead of one, will it be 2 or 1.5, whatever?
So it is a still plan to fill that now vacant position, as well as retaining the existing project manager in a very minimal part-time role for a particular project, and then still asking for an additional project manager. It's been taking us between 6 and 18 months to hire project managers, so I don't know how quickly we will need the money, but we will certainly be looking for project managers for 2 project manager positions during that time.
Okay, thanks.
And then I guess going back to the just the end of that slide, the project manager position there, we had one vacancy filled. That is that vacancy, Mr. Chairman. Is technically it's about a 3/4 vacancy because there is a part-time component there that we're covering some of the salary savings. And then that does not include the vacancy, does not include the new proposed position, because that's not an existing position for the department. Let me switch back to presentation mode so it's a little easier to see. And then just a quick slide kind of overviewing focus. I can send this out to everybody, but just kind of showing where we're focused right now versus needs and priorities. Certainly spending a lot of effort on the current large capital projects, our open channel drainage rehab program, where we're working through all of the roadside drainage systems. Our check valve program is starting to slow down a little bit, and that we've hit a lot of the obvious low-lying areas. Many of the areas that still continue to flood in tidal flooding are now over land flow, where the check valves are less productive, but there are still some areas we're looking at adding some additional valves into. So it isn't a non-impactful program. It's just been so successful. We've actually gotten a lot of the areas already that were good targets for that. Then we're kind of shifting over to the other side of the line, where we're starting to have a little more need than we have effort to expend, looking at outfall maintenance, our small project program, which we did just or we're just about to start a new project manager 1 position to manage those small projects. Again, that's great. We've had that position vacant for about 18 months. So we're excited to bring someone on board and get those small projects back and running a little more smoothly. We've been working them with our capital project managers, so we haven't let them sit by the wayside, but we haven't been quite as productive as we would be with a full-time position, obviously, running them. Pipe system rehab, we're still working through that with the IDC program, but we probably need to do more of that as we continue through. Continue looking at future large capital projects, looking for that project manager to help push that into more priority to match the need. We are working to update our asset inventory. We do have an asset manager on board that we hired this year to replace our previous asset manager who had left for Alaska. But he's been working really well with the GIS department. Just a very, very large task to update that 1984 asset inventory. And then working, of course, through future small projects will be the next one. That's all I had, unless anyone would like me to go back through any of those previous slides in more detail.
Any questions, anyone? All right.
I had a question for Matt. We have some time.
Yeah, sure. Councilmember Rappel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Matt, I recall a while back we had talked about maybe reevaluating the positions, streamlining positions, consolidating. I think I may have even thrown out the term Navy SEAL Team 6 of ditch cleaning. Where does that stand, if that is still something we're doing? Because I think we all can agree on council that we need to have a fully staffed and operational stormwater department, to say the least.
So we were successful last year with kind of the HR process to add in a few more layers, vertical layers in our field ops position work. What we've been proposing, and I think HR has agreed to look at in the compensation study, is a combination of two approaches. One, some position regrades potentially to try to fill some of these positions that clearly are struggling from a cost competitiveness. And then two, we'd call it like a career skill progression plan, where as you gain the skills for the next position above you, you basically have a fluid, we call them PCNs here, the position control numbers, that instead of it being like, this is a heavy equipment operator 1 position, and that's all it could ever be, that position that council has approved has basically a flexible budget within it, where it could be any of like the 4 or 5 levels vertically of position. So if you you learn how to drive a backhoe and get your CDL, you can get promoted into that next position, even if there is not a position technically vacant, instead of having to wait for the person above you to retire or be promoted themselves. The reason you implement something like that is trying to hire more entry level and less skilled employees, similar to what Councilman Waring was discussing, where how do you get people who have some skill sets, but not all the skill sets. And you say, we will hire you. And if you do these things and learn these skills within this number of years, you can be making this much money. And it's not you can do that if those positions become available and if there are vacancies, but more of you will be able to do these things. As long as you can actually learn the skills. Not everyone successfully gets through the licensing and gets through those skilled positions, but it does help with recruitment. Georgetown County actually just implemented a very similar program that they've been talking about, because they had I think they were at 20% vacancy on their heavy equipment operator positions in the county, and we're getting very nervous as they had some upcoming potential retirement. So they were pretty aggressive in developing a system like that as well.
Fascinating. Sounds kind of like the flex spots you have on your fantasy football team, where you can kind of put a lot of different types of positions in the same block. Gives it some flexibility. That's right. And realistically, I mean, it's very unlikely all of your employees will suddenly become incredibly skilled equipment operators. Like, people will, as they gain skills, they'll move out to other jobs and find other positions that pay differently or meet their needs. It's just that flexibility to be able to shift as you need to encourage people to come work here and say, hey, we're a great employer. Look at these like interesting dynamic things we're offering. You don't feel like you're going to get limited because you have to wait for people above you to retire or move out. So it doesn't tend to be a huge budget impact. It's more just a different way to staff and manage your department. Got it. And if I can have just one more, this is
Sure.
I've been waiting all budget ad hoc season for stormwater. Matt, you mentioned that outfall permitting was a challenge for the department, and I know that we've had several of these projects over in District 11. Osaka outfall is one of the ones that comes to mind. I know that there were efforts at the OCRM level to streamline some of these permits, and is that continuing a positive trajectory, or are we sliding back into the old way of doing things? What's sort of the current state of play there? Yeah, so we did develop with OCRM, not just us, but the sort of the many of the municipalities of the Low Country, as well as the legislative delegation, like a general permit, almost like a nationwide, but it's a different setup because it's a regional permit, but a general permit with both the Army Corps of Engineers as well as DHEC OCRM, who are the two regulatory agencies that oversee that type of work. It's supposed to be a simplified version versus an individual permit, which is typically a multi-year style approach, and was taking us generally like 18 months to go through that process previously. We have started those regional permits. We actually have received a couple of them now. We're just starting another one.
It's been a slower process than was originally expected. I think a lot of that has been the Corps had almost every permitter turnover within their permitting group. Most of them moved to other jobs in other districts. So they have some new staff on board. We actually just had a legislative delegation meeting that included the Corps and OCRM a couple months ago, kind of trying to address this issue and figure out how we can streamline it. We've been working with them to try to set up like cleaner templates where it would be a little more obvious of what everyone is looking for and everyone needs. So that's an ongoing conversation that we are still trying to smooth. There's not necessarily an easy answer, but I think as we all do more of those permits, the optimistic view is that everyone will get better at making higher quality submittals for what those agencies want to see, but those agencies then will also be faster at reviewing as they learn the skills and know more about the work. We actually have still a couple of upcoming future meetings with some federal representatives and state representatives kind of in that same vein to make sure it's continuing to be prioritized at those agencies. But the agencies are I mean, they've done a lot. Putting together general permits is a big deal for them. That's a big step they've taken. So it's going the right direction. We're hoping we would be going faster perhaps than we are. I think we're going to get there. It's just taking longer to get there than we had thought it would.
Got it. It's great to hear. And this is such an important issue for older parts of the city, West Ashley, James Island. I mean, the amount of bang for the buck you can get from cleaning out these outfalls is just tremendous. And, eliminating some of this regulatory friction just really helps more of these projects get done. So it's great to hear that. And please keep us posted as that continues. Appreciate it, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. We just received permitting for what we call Peachtree outfall in Wagner Terrace. So that is out to bid for cleaning, and just submitted to a consultant to complete permitting efforts for some Rebellion Road outfalls, which is certainly your area as well, Councilman Pell. Like you said, those older neighborhoods tend to be where we see a lot of work, and then we're working in, as we've talked about quite a bit at council, and that East Oak Forest, West Oak Forest outfall is the one that is the other big effort right now from trying to get some cleaning set up for that. We do have a number of additional ones we're looking at. We're trying not to do all 15 or 20 kind of backlogged items all at the same time until we have that clean template, and then hopefully instead of it that many submittals kind of blowing up the system and slowing everything down, the idea is that once we have that clean template, that many submittals would be a batch and would be very easy to move through and approve on a similar time frame. So that's the goal for 2024.
Councilmember Ware.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You brought it up, Matt, the East Oak Forest piece. So in the budget, do we have anything monies built in such that if we get the permit, we can get that system cleaned all the way through to underneath Greenway?
So there is small project allocation money already for that permitting and cleaning effort, Councilman, and then we also have a consultant on board under that small project allocation funding to look at those capital improvement options, which will let us develop a eventual drainage fund allocation for it as well, or proposed allocation.
If you ballpark it, what's the amount allocated?
I want to say $250,000, something like that. I have to double check for the small
project.
That's good.
That's good enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Now we got some numbers up in front of us.
Yes, I thought you might want to see the actual budget.
Yes.
So it's a very long budget, so I will scroll as you're ready for me to. And I'll send this out to everybody as well.
Any questions on the revenue side, y'all? 13,120,000 and a transfer in.
I do not so much these numbers, but will we have any results from hopefully enhanced collections on stormwater fees in 24? These people who are backing out the stormwater fee off of the water bills. Will we have any action steps towards that in 2024? And one of the ideas that Councilmember Appel, so it's a great idea, came up with was the people who are in arrearage. Are we taking any steps to turn that over to a collection agency or whatever, at least going back 3 years to get some of that money coming in?
So we will have more information from Black & Veatch's review of the existing accounts on what those liabilities potentially are. In the short run, we do have basically a collection program through Massey, the Municipal Association of South Carolina, where they will basically garnish state income taxes if there's an overdue account. So that one is set up. We still have to look at, are there other collection methodologies we need to consider, and what potential revenue those might generate. But we are looking at that, Councilman.
Councilman Appel, would you mind share? I think you had a thought on maybe how to go about collecting some of those arrearages. This was, I don't know, 6 months ago.
It's a great question. I wonder if there's a way we can turn a lot of this over to somebody in the private sector with a bounty and eat what you kill kind of concept. In terms of collection, I don't know. I haven't looked into that in terms of some of the legalities. That might be something we ask our corporation counsel to look at, just so we have the full range of options at our disposal. Because Councilman Waring, you put your finger on this issue a long time ago, and it's a great one. I mean, if people are not paying fees to the city that are owed, and we got to do something about that. Otherwise, we're just why should anybody be paying, right? It's something we got to make sure that we're being fair and diligent in pursuing these liabilities, that are out there. So I think we ought to get a full accounting of what our options are.
And maybe we can finish that up on Public Works. But anyway, we touched on it at this meeting. We can finish up at Public Works and get some information from legal on that. But thank you.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So I'm scrolling. I think it's salaries. We can kind of go right past salaries. And then start here.
Big items, salaries and services and professional and contractors. We have a lot of standing contracts with contractors, services and construction. Those are big ticket items.
Yeah, the services, professionals, and contracts includes both the $750,000 for the pipe cleaning IDCs, as well as the $750,000 for the utility fee implementation that we talked about. So that's $1.5 million of that. There's also some money for pond management that we do around the city, some third-party plan review work, some of the program manager work that AECOM performs. So some small survey tasks, tree removal, some other minor things we can certainly talk about in more detail if anyone would like to go through any of that. But that's the highlights of it. I'll note the services construction line item that's at 1.45 million. That's the small project allocation. So it's 1 million of new money and then $450,000 of carryover from expected unspent money from this calendar year for those existing projects.
I see you got a line item there, Matt, for memberships, dues, and pubs. I presume that's publications and not like Tommy Condon's.
Yes, that is true, Mayor. Ms. Wharton does not let me name the line items.
Okay.
Nobody lets me name them either, Matt. So
I would note to everybody the addition of that 400,000 we just approved for the Spring Street pump station maintenance item, and as Matt covered in his prior presentation, we're adding more and more pump stations, and honestly, I don't think over the last 30 years we kept up with the few that we had quite as well as we should have. So we will see an increase over the next 5 to 10 years of and well needed of pump station maintenance.
That's right, Mayor. And we do have them initially set up almost as fully contractor staffed. And the idea is as we learn more about how kind of outside pump experts would maintain the systems, are there items we try to bring in-house, or do we continue to keep it all contracted as we add more stations on board and have more cost efficiency options? But they are large pieces of equipment to continue to keep running.
Absolutely. And critical ones. Yep. Any questions on any of those line items or anything regarding stormwater budget? And this is proposed with no stormwater fee increase for next year, correct, Amy?
That is right.
Yeah, just keeping it alive.
And so this is the budget that we will present with the other budgets, the first meeting in December, just so you know. I want to make sure you all saw it.
Got it.
We should be able to get through this pretty quickly.
Okay.
Last meeting, we were at about a $420,000 out of balance. We're at about 145 right now. And we're finalizing some changes to fee structures for permits and inspection fees, and that should cover this. So we are pretty much balanced.
We're real close. We're within almost within a rounding error, but with some fee adjustments, you're saying we'll be able to get there, right? That's right. Okay.
So really bottom line, the general fund, we have the 11.4 million, which is covered by these enterprise funds. So that's the 144 right now that we're out of balance. And then just proposed, it'll be a little bit different because we're still working on reserves with departments. So the numbers won't be exactly like this, but it'll look pretty much like this when it's balanced. So you'll see 0 there as soon as we finalize those fee structures and work with the departments on some reserves. Any questions on any of that?
Anybody? All right.
Right. So that will be our draft budget. We pretty much have a draft budget right now. We will have a full council budget workshop on November 13th at 2:30, which we will present this to them, or at least in a presentation form. We have to advertise the final budget number and millage rate on November 15th for the Sunday paper, which is the 19th of November. And then we have to have the draft budgets to council by November 21st. So we'll probably distribute those on November 21st to everyone.
Sounds good.
And that is it. Our next meeting is on the 29th.
Terrific.
Any
And
questions? Everybody's good with what we worked on, what we have right now?
Yeah, I'm good. As a matter of fact, yeah, going back a couple of years doing COVID, this is sure a whole lot different.
Ooh, I'll say. And to be able to accomplish what we wanted to on the salary increases from last year, to finish that out without a lot of consternation, it's been a blessing this year, y'all. So thank you, Amy, and all your team for your hard work on pulling all this together. I know it's quite a process. It seems easy for us here at the end, but y'all put an amazing amount of work. And also our department, each department, worked on this starting back in July. So thanks everybody's effort.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah,
Anything else further for the good of the order?
I think we're good.
Hearing none, we'll see y'all real soon. Thanks. Thanks, everybody.